Well, let's talk about the new police minister's maiden media address. And I'm joined by Willem Els from the Institute of Security Studies, as well as crime expert, Professor Jacob Mofokeng. Thank you very much to the pair of you. Really do appreciate your time this morning. I'll start with the ISS, and Willem, I'll start with you, because I know that the ISS over the last while, since the announcement of the new cabinet came in, was looking at wanting this clarity from the new team on how they were going to deal particularly with things like their policy direction, but mostly about firearm crime, wanting to have a clear direction on that policy as well as renewal in the SAPS. Your thoughts just overall about whether the minister hit the right notes? And he outlined a couple of priority areas. We'll delve into those in just a moment. But do you think that, just broadly speaking, he's talking and speaking in the, with the right tone and energy?
Good morning to you. Yes, I think the minister hit the right notes. One thing that we noticed from him, that he prefers a inclusive and a more comprehensive plan that includes other departments and also other entities like the private sector, and he wants to bring everybody together that can actually contribute. So from that, we must commend him. We see that he's got vision in terms of that. Another thing that we also picked up from the minister is that he was very clear that he wants to separate the powers between the minister and the police and actually allow the national commissioner to do his job, and also to hold him accountable for it. He reiterated his trust in the national commissioner. That's an indication that he's going to stay with him. He's going to remain the national commissioner, but he also put him on notice that he will now have to produce. So that was very clear from the minister.
Prof. Mofokeng, to come to you, right at the very beginning, he talked about some of the signaling that he and his department and the ministry had been receiving from the public. He said, we're listening to the public cries across media platforms, and he mentioned, newspapers and listening to people on the radio and watching people on television and some of their cries around the experience of crime in their communities. Has he included those stakeholders in these conversations? I mean, it's still early days, and hopefully those public engagements will be there. But how important is it to ensure that the community is a very vocal and visceral stakeholder in any policy that you decide, in any engagement that you're deciding to embark on in the months ahead?
Well, good morning, Iman, as well as the Newzroom Afrika viewers, as well as guests from ISS. Well, indeed, he did indicate that there are concerns as well as issues raised from the public. And from his submission, like what Willem indicated, that, it looks like indeed he's looking forward to, to bring integrated, collaborations looking into how to fix, South Africa in terms of violent crimes as well as other related issues, inclusive of course, good governance within the South African Police Service, as well as, the members, how they conducted themselves. So I like his approach, because he did not really coming, to say, this is what I am going to do, but he did indicate that he will need, everyone's, especially, he did mention the missing cases or missing dockets, whereby he will need the media to be able to assist in terms of reporting of such. So in his submission today, he provides with, that kind of a feeling to indicate that indeed he learned from his predecessors, as well as, those challenges that were previously highlighted, as Willem indicated, that, too much overlapping of the Minister of Police in terms of the working of the National Commissioner, where eventually, the National Commissioner was seen to be at the big foot, whereby his predecessor was always attending to issues, and he compromised himself by promising in every situation. So the new minister is very careful, as well as, requesting more time to be provided, so that he can look at these issues, as well as how then he can bring on board all relevant stakeholders to be able to work together towards addressing violent crime, gangsterism, police corruptions, and other related issues.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, gangs, and that was one of the highlights of his address today, along with issues on GBV, particularly with relation to women and children. He mentioned the construction mafia. He talked about professionalizing the police. He also said that the police was going to be very intolerant of attacks on their service members because it would be translated and seen as an attack on the state. And Willem, I want to talk about that signaling then. Are we likely to see, a difference in the way that police are going to respond operationally in the line of fire?
Yeah, of course, the police is under fire. And you mentioned one of the main reasons why they are under fire is exactly for their firearms. These criminals want their firearms and they are easy targets, especially if they're off duty and they drop their guard and so on. So, but what we should also see that against the backdrop. The minister is faced with some serious challenges. You mentioned organized crime, women and children, firearms, the gangs, the construction mafia. The detection rate of crime since 2012 has plummeted by 61%. And that is what the minister is faced with. We have to turn that ship around. So currently our detection rate is only 12.5%. That means 12.5% of all the crimes that are committed are actually ends up in court and with some verdict. If you look at the murder rate, it is up by 77%. You look at the robbery rate, 41%. So, against that backdrop, the minister has to come with the strategies. And what is very clear is that the minister comes in on his policy level, and he is very clear that the national commissioner must come up with that strategy. He mentioned the crime prevention strategy, that it must be revised, it must be updated. He mentioned that the Police Act must be updated. We also have the Crime Prevention and Violence Prevention Act policy of 2022 that, it's still not been implemented. Once we've got very good policies, we need to revise them, we need to implement that. That is at the end of the day where the police is going to win, where on an operational level they start to implement what is in the strategies. But what the minister also mentioned was that he's going to look at the resources, especially on station level, at the detection level, detectives level, where he's looking at vehicles and all of that. You can't have five detectives sharing one vehicle and then expect of them each one to solve many cases. So that is very important. One thing that the minister did not mention was capacity building. We need to capacitate our detectives and our policemen. So that is one thing that we would have liked that he might have focused on. The other one that he focused on quite extensively, but he could have done a bit more in depth, was the countering corruption. That is the very first thing that brings down and that deters trust of the public into the police, and that is if you've got corruption and a lack of competency. So you address the competency levels, you address that it will be expected of them to be more professional, but they need to be capacitated to be so, but also corruption needs to be curbed big time.
Willem, thanks for that. And Prof. Mofokeng, what is the sense that the public gets? I mean, when you think about some of these stats that Willem is sharing with us in terms of the appalling crime detection rate and other factors, it gives you a very sort of negative view of the sixth administration and, the minister in that administration, General Becky Cele, to be able to close the gap on ensuring that there would be crimes reported, they would be followed up on, we'd have a high sort of prosecutional turnaround rate. Willem's also talking about some changes, and the minister referred to this as modernizing pieces of legislation that go back to 1993 that need to be updated. But all of this together doesn't paint a very good picture about the proactive nature of the previous administration. Has the minister done enough to set himself up for success? Again, we've got to have the caveat that it's early days, so we might see more and hear more operationally and specifically on the detail. But your sense on whether he is setting himself up for success?
Well, he's indeed setting himself for success, as well as, for the anticipation that indeed he will work with other stakeholders. But also he did highlight that police officials, we need to be careful in terms of the mandate of the police officials. If you look at the issues of, welfare-related issues, then those issues are reside within social development and other avenues, even though, women and children do get affected by the issues of crime and as well as gangsterism. But what is important, is also what he did indicate, that the support on a political will towards the police. I think for me that is very much important, the support that he will be able to provide the police to be able to, once the police make submission to him, the commissioner, in terms of the activities that they will be doing. Because many times, any person can come, whether, we have seen with the Sticks administration, how they used to promise, and then how, there was that absence of a political will to be able to bring, especially the issues of, construction mafias, the gangsterism, and, criminal networks within the countries, as well as, the deployment of the resources. The commissioner indicated that, the minister did indicate that, allocations of resources will also be determined as, per the resources, as well as, areas, provinces that will be, needing a particular attention. So indeed, we have had, promises in the past. We are a forgiving nation. We always believe in giving people opportunities. So I believe that, as much as there's a despondency, because we have had many promises in the past, whereby they promised that, they will be able to deal decisively. I need to emphasize that word, decisively, with crime.
Yeah.
But it has been excuse after excuse, and we're now looking forward in terms of what he promised, as well as to check whether he will work together with other, because it is about the ecosystem of the criminal justice system to see that it's functioning well.